tu 1.5. So tusive matumaini, but inaweza waambia deputy naye mtakuwa na mwingine. Hiyo nayo naweza wahakikishia, hii ni siasa na ishachezwa. Although nilikuwa nimenyamaza kidogo kwa sababu nilichukua break kidogo after hiyo maandamano ya Gen Z. Najua nilikuwa nimechukua break, mtu wangu. Unaweza pea mtu mwingine mic.
Haya, asante bwana Daniel Obuye. Kafairi, habari yako?
Mzuri sana boss.
Karibu.
Asante. Sasa mimi yangu ni kidogo tu. I think kuna a very gap between the leaders na sisi wananchi. Na ni kama most of us, the citizen, we have literally lost hope. Na tukiangalia hiyo impeachment, leo session ya leo naye imepaint a very different picture from enye watu wengi walikuwa nao kwa kichwa. Kuna kitu nimenotice senators wanajaribu kusema ati the upper house na parliament is the lower house. Kuna hiyo supremacy battle. Na leo senators wamebehave like very, very mature compared to what we saw in parliament. Is like nursery na probably university. Ndio naweza sema. Very, very different. Just my perspective, what if probably ya kesho pia iende the same way kama ya leo venye imeenda, enye tunaona things in black and white? What if Senate wakiamua not to do the dirty work ya Ruto, wasiingilie vita ya KK, waseme this is your problem, you got to sort your own problem nyinyi wenyewe, na in a way pengine wakama up na wasaidia Gachagua. I think itakuwa tu tena another, I don't know, just that's no opinion, but I feel like leadership yenye tuko nayo saizi wako way mbali sana na sisi wananchi. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kafaire. I see Western Shilaho is here. Western was with us earlier on while we were preparing to get into the second part of the chamber. Ebu talk to us, Bwana Western.
Peter, how are you?
I am well, just fatigued from the long day of following these activities.
Yeah, we have to. We ought to. We owe it to ourselves to follow. Peter, this impeachment process is like a presidential debate, whether it's in the US or Kenya that borrowed from the US. An exceedingly political process that changes very little vis-a-vis the minds of people who are watching. So very little changes after the process is over. And people will tell you, oh, Donald Trump won that debate, or well, if it's Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris, she won. And what are they expressing? They're expressing their desires, and they're betraying their loyalty. So it's never about facts. It's always about preferences and political leaning. It's the same thing here. It will change very little. If before the impeachment process somebody held that the deputy president is innocent, it's not going to change. Even if you adduce ironclad evidence, it's not going to change. If before the impeachment process somebody held that the deputy president is eligible for impeachment, that's not likely to change by what transpires before the Senate. So I think we have to look at it from that perspective. That when people say this is a political process, that is exactly what it is. It's not a legal process. And because even the evidence, proof of what they are saying, those allegations, a judge would look at that evidence differently. These people, they are sitting as some kind of a jury, but they're not looking at that evidence through legal lens. That's not what they're doing. It's about casting aspersions at the person who holds public office. That's what it is, casting aspersions. this person is not fit to hold public office because of A, B, C, and D. That's what impeachment process is all about. And therefore, I don't think it's going to change. The verdict of the National Assembly will be replicated in the Senate. One, it's a political process because if the President, William Ruto, did not want the process to go forward, it wouldn't have reached where it is. It would not. And that's why some people have asked him to intervene. Oh, can you do this and that? Because they appreciate that without his nod, this process wouldn't have reached where it has. And because it has reached where it has, he's convinced that he cannot lose the battle. He can't lose it. So you don't pick a fight that you're not going to win. So he would not have allowed it to get to where it is if he wasn't sure that he would prevail. Because if he doesn't prevail, it will reduce him to a lame duck president. Lame duck. Yeah, your deputy went through an impeachment process and prevailed. Well, what does that translate into? Political clout. People who are, siding with William Ruto, suddenly they start looking at him differently. Yeah, because this is a fight between him and his deputy. They start looking at him differently as to whether going forward he can win political fights. That's what it means. So I have no doubt that this is a foregone conclusion. What comes later will be what it is. Secondly, I was following some of the things that transpired, Pipita. When the council for the deputy president says, for instance, shareholding, the language of shareholding has nothing to do with ethnic groups. That is being economical with the truth. It's being economical with the truth. When they say that words like Murima, or is it Mulima, whatever, don't refer to ethnic groups or an ethnic group, or Mount Kenya doesn't refer to an ethnic group, they are being economical with the truth, and that doesn't help us because we are engaged in a mendacious conversation. We know these words are euphemistic. Yes, Mount Kenya, you're referring to an ethnic group. To some people it refers to Kikuyus, to some people it refers to that pan-ethnic group of Gema. When we're referring to Lakeside people, we're referring to an ethnic group. Luos, when we refer to Mulembe Nation, you're referring to an ethnic group. Luyas. People of Rift Valley, there may be so many ethnic groups, but you are largely referring to Kalenjins. So we are dishonest, even in our conversations. That's problematic. It is problematic. When the council or whoever it is says, when the deputy president speaks to people in Nairobi, a cosmopolitan place, in his vernacular, that is not contradictory as far as the Constitution is concerned. The Constitution affirms, the use of vernacular languages and culture and stuff like that. It's fine to that extent, but that is similar to dog whistling. It's dog whistling because we're not a country where when we go to school, like in other countries, I can put it to you. When people go to school, they are taught in vernacular languages, and it doesn't stop at primary. It continues even at high school and even at tertiary university, such that you find departments of African languages in Nigeria, in South Africa. So you can learn a different language from your first language. So if a politician uses some language, chances are that people who are not first language speakers of that particular language can understand what they're talking about. That cannot be said about Kenya. They can't. We don't speak one another's language, Kiswahili, and then if you're going to school, you can speak English. It goes as far as that. So when a person of the caliber of a deputy president, or before then Uhuru Kenyatta as a president, you address people in your vernacular, you're dog whistling. Dog whistling means you're targeting a particular constituency because they're the ones who understand the things you're talking about. And those other people, majority of your population, will have to rely on interpretation or translation or whatever that means. And you can always deny that, no, the translation is lost. So it's not consistent with the Constitution, and especially when it's about a contested issue, like the governor wants these people to be relocated, you're saying no, they can't be relocated. Or the government wants people to be relocated from riparian land, you don't want. Now you're addressing that issue through your vernacular. You are dog whistling. You are targeting a particular constituency, and that does not enhance national cohesion. It doesn't. If we spoke one another's language, we wouldn't care because you can understand the language is using. I went to school, I studied that language, I can understand. Oh, in high school, I studied, I can understand. We cannot say that of many Kenyans. And that's why people become suspicious. When at the workplace or in public spaces, you use your vernacular, they're suspicious. Are you conspiring against them? What are you planning? Using this language that majority of people don't understand. What are you up to? That's where the suspicion comes from. Secondly, because ethnicity has been used in terms of allocation of national resources and as a factor when it comes to upward mobility, people become suspicious when you gravitate towards members of the ethnic group, or when you use a language and if you've got such power as the deputy president that they don't understand. They just from the face of it suspect that there's some conspiracy going on. But even there's no speculation. The deputy president was open. Our people and stuff like that. This is not going to happen. So as far as that is concerned, I am afraid they are not helping as far as national cohesion is concerned, as far as promoting a candid conversation vis-a-vis the issues in question. What about the guy, the member of parliament who, prosecuted the motion? Well, there are some questions he couldn't answer. He gave vague responses, and to some questions, he outrightly pleaded ignorance. Well, you wouldn't expect that in a court of law, because then what that does is that it casts aspersion on his credibility. And secondly, it shows that he might not have done his homework, as it were. But as I said, it's not ironclad evidence that is required as far as this process is concerned in Parliament. So that may not really count in the final analysis. Secondly, this KEMSA witness, I think it's Dr. Munwa. Yeah, it comes across as credible. And his testimony is also credible. And what it does is that it doesn't paint the deputy president in good light, that you can use your power to interfere with the functioning of other state agencies and to your own.
But wait there, Weston. Wait. When
Yes.
you say it's credible, when you say this guy is credible, and
Yes.
he's the same guy that was asked, was he at work when this tender was being given out? He says he was not there. He came in when the tender was already cancelled. He listened. He was there, like he was asked, how are you intimidated? And the only intimidation he could think about was he got a text that was asking, do you are you in the office? So when are you in the office so that I can come for the letter? Which was actually a bid bond for a company that was not even involved. It was an actor on behalf of it. So how is he credible if he was not even directly involved in the tender? The company that they're accusing the DP of is not even directly involved with the tender. Where is the credibility?
Well, you see, the only way you can knock off his evidence and completely shred it to pieces, it will be about those phone calls he received what were they about and why was he called if he was so insignificant as far as the whole process is concerned. So if the council, the deputy president, can completely demolish that there were no calls that were made, he didn't receive those calls, and those calls had nothing to do with that tender, then you could completely shred what he's saying. But then the burden of proof will be on the people who called him. Why did you call this particular individual? To do what? That's the thing. So he may not have been there, he may not have been present and stuff like that. Because remember, this is not a process that needs ironclad evidence. It doesn't need that. It's just a question of you hold public office and you have behaved dishonorably in a manner that is unbecoming of a person of your status, of your stature. That's what it means, Peter. You see, in Kenya, we're such a litigious society that we want everything else to pass the muster as far as the law is concerned. But then, that's where the problem arises from. Because societies that entrench the rule of law, they've got something called shame. That before you do something, you have to think about the consequences. That if you're to be caught, you won't even wait to be arraigned before a court of law. You will even resign from your position, you take political responsibility and stuff like that. But here, this is legalese that we are in, that things have to be proven beyond any reasonable doubt. But I'm afraid that's not how the rule of law is entrenched. The rule of law is entrenched by restraint. I can't do this as a deputy president. I can't do this as a cabinet minister. I can't do this as a president because I'm running afoul of the law.
1 minute.
And if I'm found, I'll be held responsible. So I am less interested in the legalese because legalese, it's like, Pipita, let me as I learned, if you have got money and you commit a crime, well, chances are you'll get the best lawyers. Chances are you may even know some justices that will sit in court over your matter. Chances are you're so powerful that some people will be scared of you and therefore they won't even appear in court to testify against you. So you are likely to walk or your case will collapse. But if you don't have money, you will go to court and you'll be tried and you're likely to be locked up. And that's why in a society where there's a lot of corruption and disregard for the rule of law, it becomes extremely problematic to rely on the law to establish culpability and who is on the wrong and who is not on the wrong. It's very problematic, if you are to ask me, because that rule of law can always be politicized or exploited or instrumentalized. And it has been the case in our country before and even now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shilaho. I don't want to get to 1 a.m. today because I'll be back here again at around 10 a.m. for more of that sitting. I see for me, I mean, I'm going to do and Temba. I think those are going to be the last ones I'm listening to unless someone else comes to the mic. For me.
Thank you, Pepita. I want to invite all of us to think differently for a second. So, in plain daylight or night, Rigathi Gachagua reached out to a KEMSA CEO, follow up on a bid bond of a company that his son is a country representative of. His son. He followed up on his son's behalf. If anything else, unfortunately, it is clear there's conflict of interest. Obviously, we might not want to admit it. It might be very, very difficult for the CEO to prove. But what choice did he have? When you receive a text from the second in command the second in command, telling you or following up on a bid bond. He never followed up on the 17 other bid bonds for the companies that were interested in that particular tender because they were not important to him. Hadn't the Global Fund pushed back on these nets, his son will be sitting comfortably somewhere with a tender worth 3.5 or 7 billion. How many times do we know or have we tried bidding for tenders? These guys put these things on the Star every Tuesday, I think. You get them for free. But they already know where those tenders are going. And a good number of those tenders, if you have worked in a company, private, public, no, mostly private companies, when you're bidding for those tenders from government, how many times have people sat with guys in finance, in guys in departments, talking about the plans for next year, which tender is coming when? There are companies we have worked for that we know. They knew a certain tender is going to come out tomorrow. They know how much that tender is worth. All that information is with them. Take a good example of number one with this shift thing, 104 billion. No competitive bidding, nothing. Tukaambiwa ilikuwa nini? There's a word they used on how they arrived at that company. Look at the Adanis. Wamepatiwa 95 billion for electricity. Whose son was involved? Because they cannot trade in their own names. Which companies are these? Why will someone need 22 companies to trade what? We all know the outcome of what it's going to be. We all know that, yes, for the first time, or we have always known, but at least now, in the court of public opinion, you can see the filth, the deplorable state, the terrible, terrible situation that we find ourselves in. I don't know what is going to come of this country, to be honest. And if this is what they normally do, all of them, what is left of this country? Thank you.
Thank you so much, me for me. And of course umenifanya nikajiuliza. Kuna vitu mbili zenye nilinote throughout this. First of all, that KEMSA tender. And he has been justifying that he's fighting for his family and family's livelihood. But he's using state influence because when it comes to the Treetops Hotel in Nyeri, it's a 400 million hotel, guys.
Exactly. All of them, they know zote ni zao.
Yes.
And that's what I want all of us to see. In as much as whatever
hata
happened, I saw you commenting.
Hata ya huyo brother yake hiyo ya brother yake hiyo. What are the chances it is his?
One question, Pipita, I want to open your mind to. All those CR12 zimetoka. A man dies, he has sons, he has wives, he has children. Umeona jina ya kijana ya huyo mtu alikufa kwa hizo CR12? Umeona bibi yake?
I think someone asked where the able-bodied sons and daughters.
The guy was the governor of Nyeri. The brother is in Madera, I don't know where. All of them are trading. They are in business. That is why the man could not own that wealth alone. It was not his to keep. It was theirs, the two of them. When it comes to lie in front of us and cry and try and whip our emotions about, oh, you know, my mother died, I'm an orphan, blah, blah. That's why I go to... Idiot. The truth is this. They are thieves. And they have been brought to us. Yes, we know they are bigger thieves, but for the first time in front of the gallery, it plays for all of us to see what are the kind of people you are hoping, bring thinking, they will bring change to this country. Sorry for interrupting.
But yes, thank you for that also for pointing all that out. I see Temba is here. Temba, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
Talk to me.
Thanks for the space, Peter. So just had the submission made by the colleagues on the space. So maybe my just first question will be, on Sunday we'll be having Mashuda Day, whereby the president will be in the coast, and we have one in Uhuru Park and one in Narok. So it's just up to us to decide where we are supposed to go. Maybe based on what we need to achieve from that Mashujaa Day. So maybe another thing that I learned from this Gachagua's things of impeachment. Okay, before I proceed, last week when the parliament was discussing the same matter of impeachment, just in a day, bombshell came about when our energy CS, that is the former chief minority whip, who's told us that already Adana has signed a deal to take up the role of Ketra Corporation. So maybe expect a different thing to happen maybe tomorrow or the day after. So we should not concentrate on the impeachment so much and we forget our other roles, because I see these guys fear public so much, whereby they have to come up with an issue or something that will draw all our attention so that they can push in their agenda. So let's just be vigilant on that. Okay, on the issue of impeachment of Gachagua, I've learned a lot of things, and it's good. It's happening when no one expected, and maybe we've seen others are just mere allegations, so no one can approve or can validate that others are truly done by this guy. So all in all, we need also to be very keen, because it's also shaping our minds and shaping our political landscape, whereby we need to learn one or two things there from it, because we've learned that these politicians are there to enrich themselves. They are doing everything in their powers to either enrich their families or live a very good life for their people, whereas the really hard workers that are Kenyans are struggling somewhere, are struggling to make a living out of what they are doing. So our taxes being okay, anyway, Kenya near shareholding, they have big shares, that's why they are doing what they are doing. So we hoped, okay, hakuna mwenye alikuwa na trust Raila the way I used to do, but I realized that politicians are there to enrich themselves and they have their own self-interest, whereby once they get it, they forget about everything that has been happening. So Raila has been telling us how he's been fighting for freedom for this country. But I am so perplexed when I see him come out and defend something that has been spreading across, that the company has been involving itself in dubious activities, corruption, and money laundering. The guy is defending. Like, what are you expecting from that person? That's a very... Okay, anyway, we did not like Ruto. That's why some of us did not vote for Ruto, but we voted for Raila, whom we thought that he could do something, maybe speak something which people can want to hear, maybe defending something that people have interest in. But the way he stood up and said that, it's total betrayal. Sawa. That's for all politicians, and it's just they are grouping themselves, leaving citizens languishing in poverty, languishing in problems, because they do not have anyone to defend them. So I remember what Miguna used to say, and there are some other things that some other people, maybe political or religion leaders, used to say about it. But again, you come to realize, you are warned. Now it has come to bite you. We just have to swallow our pride. Thank you, Pipita.
Thank you so much for that submission, Wanatemba. I don't want to go all the way and make this a conversation. Sina nguvu kweli hivi. But I want to say thank you so much. Unless anybody else has something to submit before we call it a night, I'm gonna give Western 5 minutes until 40. Ni call it a night kama kutakuwa na mtu mwingine amejiongezea ndani. So Western, you have 5 minutes. I'm gonna stop you at exactly 4 minutes at exactly 40. Ni call it a night hapa hivi kwenye home run. Western.
Oh, thanks, Pipita. Pipita, for me, I read the unintended consequence of the process. Some of those members of parliament, both in the National Assembly and the Senate, may not be appreciative of it. But I can put it to you that this process will go a long way in entrenching democracy. Because until now, Pipita, we tend to be scared of contestation. We tend to be scared of opposition. We tend to be scared of pluralism. But multi-party politics, by its very nature, is oppositional. Multi-party politics, by its very nature, is about contestation. And it's about difference. Because those differences are there in terms of ethnic, gender, race, regional, name it, class. They're there. And it's only through politics that we can be able to aggregate all these contradictions and distill what could approximate a common vision for all of us. But what happens is, no, if these people differ, that translates into political instability. No, it doesn't. It does not. In any case, how do you gauge that you are a robust and consolidating democracy? You gauge whereby the political elite fall out and nothing happens. The clouds do not collapse. People go about their lives. That is how you gauge a consolidated and robust democracy. That's what it means. But, oh, we want peace. We want peace, but these people, if they're together, it's not actually unity, it's a conspiracy. There's a difference between unity and a conspiracy. So I take it as a positive thing in such a way that if some of those guys don't know what they're doing, it could actually be their turn tomorrow. Their turn tomorrow to face the guillotine, as it were. So I look at it from that perspective. Secondly, we must appreciate that this political elite do not represent our interests. I think we don't appreciate that well enough. They don't. And therefore, this tendency to side with them when they're embattled or when they meet their Waterloo, I think we have to move away from that. We have to. If you side with the people of Kenya, let it be demonstrated at the hour of need. It can't be that you side with them from a purely self-serving perspective. We can't allow that. On a daily basis, we complain about a lot of things. We raise issues about a lot of things. Hardly do we see any one of these people standing with us. Hardly do we see anybody resigning from the cabinet, from the government, on the basis of principle that this can't be implemented because it's hurting my constituents. It's hurting the people of Kenya. We don't see that. But when they're embattled over corruption, over what, suddenly we say, no, this can't happen too. So does it mean this misery is only meant for mere mortals in Kenya? I think we should reflect on that. Secondly, Rigathi is a reading in contradiction, Pipita. If you look at him, he demonstrates one thing, that at the end of the day, all of us want good things. We want quality. We want a functioning society. We want a functioning economy. Look at him. Look at his choice of attorneys. That lead attorney, he doesn't come from his ethnic group, does he? He comes from an ethnic group where he's been, spending his time saying these people are not part of this shareholding company, whatever he calls it. It's a very bizarre way of describing a government, that you can liken a government to a company. People have dividends and stuff like that and profit. Functioning and effective governments are welfare based. They're not like companies. They're not driven by profit. They're not defined by dividends. They're defined by this need to transform every other person's life. So this lead attorney, Elisha is a Luo. So when is it convenient for you to disparage people and other people and promote hatred and divisions? And when is it convenient to you to look for quality? When is it convenient? So you know what is good for you and you know what's good for the country, but you still propagate very backward and primitive politics. Can you see that contradiction? It was the same thing when they were at The Hague. Busy, when they were on the campaign trail, they were talking about racism and imperialism and white people. Okay, look at them at The Hague. A battery of white attorneys. So you know what's good, eh? You invoke racism and imperialism for political mileage. But when push comes to shove, you want someone who will do the job. You don't care about tribe. You don't care about race. You don't care about gender. Why do we tolerate these people? Why do we tolerate them? Why do we tolerate them? When we see these people are studies in contradiction, they don't believe in the things they're doing, but they advance those things because those things hurt the people of Kenya. And when the people of Kenya hurt, they become hopeless. And when they're hopeless, you can manipulate them for your economic and political advancement. Are we seeing what's happening? Are we even seeing? We have to. So, Pipita, as I land, what I'm saying is that when we focus on 2027 elections, I want to ask you a question as you go to bed. And when you can answer that question, we'll actually give you an inkling as to whether 2027 elections will be qualitatively different from the elections we've had in the past. When you were in primary school or high school or tertiary, or even now, for those who are lucky enough to hold a job, have you ever stood up for something individually? Individually. Not that you are, for a group. You didn't bother whether every other person sided with you or not. You believed in a particular principle. You're convinced this is injustice and you stood up for it. If you did, how many of your contemporaries stood by you? They stood by you. Pipita stood up for a principle. This is what we need, what we want in this school, at this workplace. We agree with him. How many people stood with you or by you? I'll answer you. In most cases, you may find you're the only one. In most cases. Every other person says, no, I could be expelled from this school, man. No, I can't. I know these issues are weighty. I agree, but I'm not going to raise my head above the parapet. I don't. At the workplace, no, there's injustice. No, I can't. I'm going to be fired. No, let me just keep quiet. How many people? So in most cases, you always find you may be the only one, or at most you are two of them. The other people opt to keep quiet, and they hope that things will be better. If you're agitating for a pay rise, if it's affected, they'll benefit, but they're not going to express their discontent lest they face the wrath. So it's the same thing in that parliament that you're seeing. It's the same thing. It's like the classroom that you are in at primary, at high school, and tertiary. You're going to find very few people have got the conviction to stand up for something. So even the elections we go for next time, we're likely to get more representatives like your fellow classmates at that time. Then people will stand up for something. That's the most unfortunate thing. Because in parliament, you don't get people different from what appears to be common within the rest of the society. You don't find different people. You always draw from that. And then the people find themselves in parliament. I can put it to you that under Jomo Kenyatta or is it Daniel Moi, there are only 7 people, and they've been famously referred to as 7 bearded sisters. One of them was this James Orengo. People who just stood up for something, 7 of them, amongst very many parliamentarians. And I don't think that has changed, has it? You only find 7 who can stand up for something and consistently raise public interest issues. It hasn't changed. We change, people, we go to elections, we retire people, but the people who vote for are not any different from those who were there before. Why? Because they're being drawn from this society where people are keen for status quo, keen for, if I can just be patient enough, tomorrow things will be better. If I raise up my head above the parapet, it's going to be chopped off. Let me just hold my peace. Whether it's meetings at school, where parents are, how many parents raise issues? No, you may find 1. The rest, they just go by what the principal says. At the church, how many people stand up for to the pastor? You only find 1. The rest, no, I can't. I'm going to be expelled from this church. So we're not likely to get any different people even after next elections, Peter, unless we sort out the society. These questions must robustly be raised within the wider society first, and then some of these people will get into parliament and they will resist being manipulated by the executive, or they resist being bought by whoever has got big money, or they resist voting for bills because their political leader says they